This is a fan-generated show. If you'd like to support us, please go to jamieglazov.com. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our new Rumble channel. All your support is greatly appreciated.
Good evening. Welcome to the Glazov Gang. Tonight, Biden labels Republicans as the new terrorists. With us this evening and back by popular demand, Daniel Greenfield, a Shillman Fellow at the David Horowitz Freedom Center, and also the writer and editor of the blog The Point at frontpagemag.com. Daniel, welcome back to the Glazov Gang.
Thank you for having me back.
It is a privilege and an honor. So, Daniel, your brilliant work at Front Page Magazine, recently your article with the title, Biden's Terror Strategy Defines Republicans as the New Terrorists. Fascinating article, and also very frightening. So Daniel, tell us about this. So there's this newly released national strategy for countering domestic terrorism. And once again, it appears that the Biden administration is not, in terms of defending America, it's not really focused on ISIS or Al-Qaeda or Islamic extremism or on China or on communism. They're focused on something else, right?
So the Biden administration, like most leftist regimes, has absolutely no interest in fighting external enemies, only internal political enemies. That's what's going on here. We're coming up on the pivotal anniversary of the September 11th attacks. The FBI continues to monitor and break up Islamic terrorist attacks, including one that actually contemplated driving a truck through the Seattle Gay Pride Parade. We have ongoing Islamic terror plots that are still underway. There's been almost no discussion of that. We recently had the anniversary of the Post massacre in Orlando. Biden commemorated it. The media talked about it. They didn't talk about the fact that Omar Mateen was an Islamic terrorist who pledged allegiance to ISIS, who was name-checking Al-Qaeda groups during his talks with police. And this, of course, they kept claiming that he was just repressed or something like that. In fact, he was an Islamic terrorist. He was not out to target gay people. He was out to kill Americans in the name of Islam. But there's been no talk about that from the Biden administration. Instead, pretty much the entire counterterrorism strategy there is dealing with so-called political opponents, Republicans, conservatives, patriots, anti-government extremists, which is very much a callback to what the Clinton administration was doing when it kept claiming that the militia movement was the great big threat. So you're seeing a lot of this now. The only threat that they want to discuss are threats from the right. That's it in a nutshell. If you oppose the Biden administration, if you question Biden's election, if you're guilty of what they describe as conspiracy theories, you're a terrorist threat.
Well, thank you, Daniel. That's quite a bit in a nutshell. We appreciate that. And very, very frightening, very concerning what the left is doing. And as always, and of course it's accelerating, the left is allied with and abetting the ideologies and the movements that want to destroy this country. And they're making it very, very difficult for Americans and America to make a threat assessment of any kind, whether it's people that want to perpetrate jihad and other threats. And now it appears, as you're saying, well, it doesn't appear, it's a fact, that now, even if you disagree with certain things that the left believes in, like critical race theory, that once, just with a few connecting dots that the Biden administration is going to make now, you're some kind of a terrorist now. We see some kind of a Bolshevik revolution happening here. Very, very concerning. So let's just just narrow in on a few of your points here. So, and a few of the things that's happening. So they're very clever in how they're doing this. So if you disagree with how the left sees things, you are advocating quote unquote misinformation. And what they have to do to get rid of this misinformation is to suppress, censor, and indoctrinate, right?
Exactly right. Now, you may recall during the Obama administration, their new strategy for fighting terrorism was something called CVE, or Countering Violent Extremism. So the first step that they took was actually renaming terrorism. They tried calling it man-caused disasters. That stuff didn't stick. What they focused in on was violent extremism. The thing about violent extremism is it's portable. You can use it to describe Islamic terrorism. You can use it to describe your own political opponents. Now, the big thing about CV was political indoctrination. Instead of actually going after terrorists, they focused on doing stupid things like arguing with ISIS on Twitter. Their whole idea was you had to deal with the root causes. You had to deprogram people, and you were dealing with the ideological thing. Now, a government is not supposed to be dealing with that. A government is supposed to be dealing with physical threats. It's not supposed to be getting into the realm of ideas. It's not supposed to be saying, this is what Islamic terror is, this is what Islam is not. And they were doing this kind of stuff. They were allying with the Muslim Brotherhood. Now, the thing is, they're now reorienting CV for complete domestic use, which means what the strategy does is it identifies a political opposition as a terrorist threat, as an ideological threat, which means they're now countering, as you've said, misinformation. They're focusing, yes, on censoring the internet more, but they're also going after this idea that we're dealing with conspiracy theories, we're dealing with this kind of opposition of ideas, and this is the root cause of the terrorism, and this is what we need to deal with. And of course, they identify that as being political opposition to the left's agenda, which means what they've basically done is said that conservatives are the source of domestic terrorism in this country, and they can't defeat domestic terrorism without defeating conservative ideas, which means enlisting the government and everything associated with it into the top priority of defeating conservative ideas.
Right. It's very interesting, this label of conspiracy theory that they've pushed on everything. So, back when COVID first started, they were like, we're just flattening the curve for 2 weeks, just flatten the curve for 2 weeks. And anybody that said anything else during that time, that, hey, they're plotting to do this, the deep state and the globalists are plotting to do this, they're going to try to get push the vaccines on us, then there's going to be certain vaccine passports, whatever. You were a conspiracy theorist, but now all of that is coming true. Even when you look at all the very strange circumstances surrounding our election, anybody that said anything was a conspiracy theorist. But a lot of the evidence that's surfacing, including in Arizona, looks like one could say a few very suspicious and peculiar things that happened in voting during the election. So, Daniel, what do you make of all this, that people are labeled conspiracy theorists, but a lot of these conspiracies within a short while turn out to be, have a lot of validity to them?
So Democrats and their media operate in what I like to call 3 stages. Stage 1 is this will absolutely never happen. Stage 2 is, it might happen, but it's not that big of a deal. And stage 3 is, of course, it's happening and it's an excellent idea and we should all embrace it. And when we actually break down much of what we see into those 3 phases, we see this around us all the time. We see this with the pandemic. We see this with the growing abuses of authority by the political organizations of the Democrats. We see this with censorship and the deplatforming of conservatives. But basically, we see this all around us. So they begin with, of course, a flat denial. Then they segue to actually, we're seeing this now with critical race theory. Then they segue into, well, yes, this is somewhat of an issue, but conservatives are completely blowing this out of proportion. They're pouncing on it. And then, of course, they get to the final part where, of course, this is now the new system. This is the new approach. Everybody has to absolutely accept it. And, it goes through these 3 phases. And sometimes it goes through these 3 phases over a matter of decades, which we've seen with socialism. And sometimes it goes through these phases in a matter of a year or even a matter of a month or two, which has been absolutely incredible. That's what we've seen, for example, with the Black Lives Matter race riots, where they begin by denying their agenda. And then, of course, they conclude by saying, yes, this is exactly our agenda. Now, in that kind of atmosphere, of course, there are all sorts of people who will distrust the system that is very clearly lying to them. And this is a problem because when you absolutely destroy institutional trust, when you prove that you are actually conspiring, then of course there'll be conspiracy theories. And some of these conspiracy theories will be nonsense. Some of them will be partially true. Some of them will be completely true because, and this is really the issue, when you have to conspire, that means there's no institutional trust. That means you can't trust what the government is telling you. It means you can't trust what the media is telling you. And at that point, you're just dealing with conspiracies. And really, if you want to stop conspiracy theories, stop conspiring, yet they refuse to stop conspiring.
Okay. Crazy stuff, Daniel. Included in all of this craziness and madness and the suicide of our civilization in many respects, the left, of course, perpetrating it and just, making holes and carving holes in our ship as we see it go down. Now, critical race theory, in a nutshell, Marxist hatred, teaching, people and, children, everything in our country now. Critical race theory teaches that America is an awful racist country. The hatred of white people, of course, is at the center of this theory. And now this critical race theory is being imposed on our military. So how does somebody join our military and they're trying to put their lives on the line to defend America, but they're being told that America is an awful, racist place, monstrous place, that capitalism is terrible, and if the person is white in the military, that they should maybe off themselves somehow because they're so terrible. This whole thing does not add up, and it's not supposed to add up, is it? It's some kind of it's really just a lethal attack on our ability to survive, right?
Those are very good points. A good way to understand what's going on with the military is to look at what happened with college campuses. Back in the day, the Ivy League was producing the next generation of America's leaders. And then all those people were programmed into thinking that America was evil, it needed to be fundamentally transformed, or maybe outright destroyed. Now, they're doing the same thing with the military. They've been doing this for a while with the academic components of the military, like the Naval War College. But they're now forcing this on absolutely everybody. They're absolutely imposing it from the top down. That's what the David Harwood's Freedom Center has been addressing lately. This pressure is really meant to transform the military because, again, from the perspective of the left, who's the enemy? It's not China, it's not ISIS, it's not out there. The enemy is in here. America itself is the enemy. And the military is meant to be a revolutionary institution, one that's going to tackle all the evils of America. It's meant to tackle American racism. It's meant to tackle, of course, these domestic terrorists who don't believe what the media tells them, who traffic in conspiracy theories, who vote for Republicans, who oppose Democrat rule. This is the upshot. I mean, to the left, every institution has to be based around fighting the internal enemy, the reactionaries. And this is what they're trying to turn the military into. And this is a great threat. It's a great threat, first of all, because we're going to lose the ability to defend ourselves against communist China, against Islamic terrorism, but it's also because they're trying to turn the military into an instrument of domestic repression, the way they've turned every single other part of the government.
Right, and well, as you said as well, Front Page Magazine is on the front lines trying to defend our military from this assault of the left and all this critical race theory being imposed on the military personnel. So everybody check out frontpagemag.com and see all the vital and precious work that it's doing. And so Daniel, if you're even slightly suspicious of critical race theory, you just may be a domestic terrorist. So that's how the left is weaving all of this. Before we go, Daniel, I just wanted to bring up, everything is just so surreal now. We have the Bolshevik Revolution happening all over again in our country. And it's terrifying for those of us that know what the Bolshevik Revolution was and were victims of it in various ways, including with our ancestors or with our family, etc. But the other just very surreal stuff going on. Biden's recent press conference on the whole infrastructure business, he started whispering to the members of the press during the press conference. To me, it was more haunting than the movie The Shining when I watched it when I was little. It was just really, really haunting stuff. What do you make of what's going on?
I mean, with Biden, there's always two layers. One layer, obviously, is the left is quite evil and quite destructive. And the other is that Biden himself is just mentally out to lunch. And, it's always something that needs to be considered when you're dealing with a guy who is very clearly so much of the time out to lunch. I mean, you're talking about a guy who's being trotted in front of the cameras, yet not really being allowed to answer questions, who's lagging behind every normal thing that a president's supposed to be doing, whether it's a foreign trip or whether it's a State of the Union address. So this is a guy who's basically not trusted by the people around him to function in public because, he might just do weird and creepy and embarrassing things like that.
Yeah. All right. Well, on that note, Daniel Greenfield, thank you for being such a noble truth teller during our time. Always an honor to have you on the Glazov Gang. Keep up the great work.
Thank you. Always my honor to be here, and thank you for everything you're doing to spread the truth.
Thank you so much, Daniel. And thank you for joining the Glazov Gang this evening. We've had enough of YouTube censorship, and we'll probably be kicked off of there very soon. Anyway, please subscribe to us on our Rumble channel. Look up the Glazov Gang on Rumble, subscribe to us there, and hit instant notifications. We'll see you soon. Good night. Go to mypillow.com and use code GG21 to get incredible and amazing discounts. Or just call 1-800-854-0673. That's right. MyPillow.com is waiting for you. Start living like a king. Start being, for once, the coolest version of you. And all the while, you'll be supporting a true American hero that's fighting a true American cause. God bless you, and God bless America. And God bless Mike Lindell and My Pillow.